let's get started. Okay, each of you went to very different schools and had some unique experiences. Do you think your choice of school, your choice of studies, or your choice of approach at school made a difference for where you are today? Starting with Christina.
It's a really great question. You know those every school has a cop-out major, like the last resort. I don't know what people call the easy major. That was me, actually. I started in bio and then switched to bioengineering, and then I ended up declaring management, which was kind of everyone's like, really? That kind of major over at MIT. And I had a complex. I was really insecure, and I had a complex about it. So people would ask me, what major are you? I'd be like, nope, don't ask me that question. But then what I learned while being in that major was just that really, it doesn't matter what you study or where you go to school. You put into it as much as you get out of it. You know, if you went to Harvard and you just did the bare minimum, and that was it, you get the bare minimum out of the school too. But if you really go out of your way, I went to every startup pitch event when we were starting our company. I went to all the startup resources to talk to all the professors. That's what I got out of it was, now I'm a guest lecturer at MIT because I went to the professors and I said, hey, I need your help. And then you kind of just get those opportunities from there. So I don't know if you want to go next.
Sure.
Yeah,
Catherine,
I had maybe a little bit of a different experience. So I started out in business, and after taking some programming courses, got some advice from an uncle to switch to computer science. And for me, his tip was that it would better differentiate me. And I think that has worked in my favor. There's a certain street credibility that comes a little bit with some of the credentials. It helps you with some of the first introductions when people don't know you yet. But that being said, once people get to know you, that's less important. So it's less important what your college is. I mean, for me, I don't come from a major brand of university, but having those credentials has helped.
Dale, how about you?
Yeah, I would think the most important class I took that's helped me not just with fundamentals of what I'm doing in my discipline, which is marketing, has been psychology. I minored in psychology. I majored in business management, but I used the basics of what I learned in the psychology class in far more ways than I ever did what I learned in accounting and finance and LIFO and FIFO and all those crazy things that maybe you use once in a while, but every day with even just furthering your career where you are and talking to people, talking to VCs, it's all psychology.
Interesting.
April.
My God, my son is a biomedical engineering major, so I don't want to hear that. But so I majored in business, and I don't think that was so formative, actually, in my career. But what I think was more formative was the people that I met in college, the connections that I made, and the community that I really developed in college. And that's what I've been able to call upon. I have 2 kids that are in college now. I hope he stays in biomedical engineering. That was my curse there, I know. And I have another son who's graduating in May who wants to be a financial planner. And so I would say that it's not so much about what, for me, in my experience, not so much about the major that you have, but the first job that you have. And that's what I'm trying to help my kids with. So it's the first job that you have that leads to your second job. And it's that second job I found to be mostly the most formative job that leads you to the rest of your career. So I would say it's super important to think about your first job leading to your second job and the rest of your career.
Well, or what you said about the network. So
yes.
In a sense, you're successful because other people want you to be successful, probably because you're also useful to them and are able to produce some results. So that network for me over the years has been very useful.
And that network helped you,
It could come
Christina,
from
to
school,
get
it
your
could come somewhere
Yes,
else.
the network
lecturing
effect.
position, right? So April,
Yes.
you've already professed to having millennials.
I have.
And so as the mother of millennials, you're a bit of an expert on them. What is your one takeaway that we should all know regarding this generation? Because they are, sort of badmouth a bit in
my
the
own
news.
home. No. So basically, so I grew up in Detroit, and the major, most exciting thing and the major career goal for everyone was to get a job with the automotive companies and stay with them for 40 years. And at the end of it, retire with a gold watch. Today, I can tell you that millennials have upwards of 17 jobs or are projected to have 17 jobs over their career, and they want to retire with a Google watch, right? Not anything like that. So I think the most important thing is to think about, again, the network effect, what it is that you, then the people you meet along the way, and how you can bring that network of people from you from job to job. So think about yourselves as a personal brand and what you can do to bring that personal brand and have your own value props and for people to understand about you. So I think millennials, right, are thinking broadly as a group, but think about yourselves individually, what it is about you that makes yourself individual and how to bring that forward through all of those jobs, whatever your career path might be.
Awesome. So how did each of you go from a large company to a startup? And if you would, please compare and contrast the differences, the good, the bad, the ugly, and starting with Catherine.
So I don't know, I mean, I started at Nortel, massive organization, went under just as I was about to go really, truly full-time after university, and met our founder at a barbecue. Our girlfriends, boyfriends were dating at the time. And for me, getting involved in a startup, we had no customers. We were operating out of a townhouse. We had servers in his basement, leaky basement. And it gives you an unmatched view of your impact and accountability on results, on actually helping the customer. It requires a great deal of focus, a real laser sharp focus on what is your purpose. And a little bit of, I would say, almost insurgency, like how are you going to get out there and find a way, branch your skill set perhaps beyond what you've learned in school to make something happen. So for me, that startup mind, the owner mindset that comes with working in a small company has been instrumental to my professional success. And then of course, as you grow and you acquire customers, there's a need to add layers. And so we brought in people from IBM, from TD, from these other companies that helped us introduce these layers. But ultimately, unless you're going to be a Coke and have true economies of scale and global power, then it still comes down to maintaining that owner's mindset and that obsession with customers. So that you can have continued growth. So anyway, that's been my experience across that spectrum.
April, how about you?
So for me, I think, a millennial is a little bit different about this. I've seen from my older son as he's graduated and his friends are in the workforce, that people are not as excited about working for large firms as they were and going to some of the brand name companies as they've been in the past. And a startup holds a lot of interest for a lot of millennials as their first job. So that's a little bit upside down from where maybe all of us have come. But in my first job, I learned, I would say, a lot about corporate structure, how things were done at a corporate and an enterprise level. So some of the basics, the foundations in terms of business. I was able to learn different departments, how they operated, and so get a little bit outside of myself, that rather than starting as a startup. And I founded my startup 10 years ago in 2008 in New York City. And I was telling someone where everyone said to me, you're too old, April. Your idea is not very good. Banks will never hire outside marketing firms. High net worth people will never be on the internet. I faced a lot of challenges, I would say, from people, doubters. But I think the thing that motivated me the most is actual fear. So I tell people that all the time. The fear of failure was what motivated me to call on my network, think about people, and really bootstrap myself and my own business. So I think that is really important skill, and it's okay to have those feelings of fear of failure and also be enamored with success, right? That's also a driver on the other end.
Kristen?
I think one story that really affected me when it came to which company to choose, I actually interned at like 3 of the largest banks in the world. And then I heard Sal Khan, he gave a commencement speech one year from Khan Academy. And he said, just imagine, picture that you're 80, 90, 100 years old, you're sitting in your deathbed and you're reflecting on your life. Would you feel proud of working at your current company for the next, 30, 40 years? Or do you want to be somewhere else? Would you wish that you were someplace else doing something either more ambitious or in a different place in the world or whatever it may be? And that really got me thinking like, oh my gosh, would I be proud working here for 20, 30 years? And I realized, oh, maybe not. And so I thought, well, you might as well, since it's okay to kind of just start a company, and if it fails, it's okay, I can always go back to working at a big firm, was my mindset at the time. And that helped me kind of get the confidence to be able to take that leap of faith.
So I'm going to break it back down to the question, because all these great insights, I think we miss some of the nitty-gritty of like pros and cons, right? Big firm, some of the pros. Networking, you can have a vast network of mentors, and you have the ability, I think one of you guys mentioned, like learning all the disciplines, learning how an organization is structured, learning what the finance department does versus what the biz dev team does. I think those are all really good foundational things to learn, and getting like just the discipline of like how to write a project brief. Like I expect someone on the marketing team to come in and know how to write a project brief, but if the startup is your first world, you just have no idea. So just having that at a big company is really great from a foundational standpoint. The cons are your work gets lost. Like you have to stand out from the crowd 10x. You have to hustle harder. You have to raise your hand higher. You have to impress, and there's so many layers to get through to actually feel like your work has an impact at all. At a startup, you're completely exposed. If you don't know your shit, you're screwed. Like you are the last stop. You're pressing the button. You're coming up with the concepts. So you better know your stuff. The flip side is like your idea has an opportunity to shine. Your thoughts that you put down on paper can be executed quickly. So there's like a trade-off. I think starting at a big company helped me a lot, and I got to do a lot of different things that then I could apply where I am now at Stash. If I didn't have that, I would kind of be lost. I'd be swimming in a world of how do I get any of this done?
It's funny that you say know your shit, because I had that written down and I was like, can I say that from this book that I read? But it's so important to know your craft, and some of the best advice that I've gotten, especially later in my career, has been to be careful that it's not about what you learned in the past or what you've given in the past. Like just because I was there in the beginning, and I had a few shares and we had a few successes, that's not final. I mean, that's a Winston Churchill quote, success is not final. And so it's what are you giving today? What are you learning today? And really importantly is not spinning your wheels. It's so easy to work hard and do nothing and produce nothing. So what is the actual outcome? Which probably gets into some of these fail fast conversations and try something and get out there.
And this is why these ladies have closed multi-million-dollar deals. I specifically crafted questions, not asking about the deals, but asking about these women so you understand what it really takes to close multi-million-dollar deals. And it is having your shit together. So great.
And the team.
And the team.
I know for us, I get involved in the pursuit. Yep. We're getting even better at getting some of the product and technology and UX talent into the pursuit, but honoring what other people are good at, and their closing skills and relationship management, other people that have skills that are outside of mine is, it takes a team to win those deals.
It does. It definitely does. And to build that team, to continue to win.
Yeah,
as well.
and to know, right, your community. I can't, and I think everybody said that in, a bunch of different ways, but building your network, keeping your community, having that good name, especially today in the digital age, having your work speak for itself, knowing people who knows who, not taking advantage, but understanding relationships, how people might connect, could be something not obvious. Probably the 5 of us on this panel are more interconnected than we think, but we just haven't mapped each other yet. But we'll do that after this session, because that will be a natural thing that women do actually as networkers as we leave from this. So I don't want to leave without saying that, because I think that this being a women's conference, that's something women do very naturally, is community building, networking, and socializing. So those are key skills.
Absolutely. So Christina, you started your hedge fund with $1,000 in savings, and now you trade up to $1 billion per day. So yeah, let's give her a hand.
Maybe you shouldn't be a billionaire.
How did you raise funding from scratch, and how did you do it?
That's a really good question, and I hope.
And you have 2
hopefully-
minutes.
Okay, 2
Yeah.
minutes. I got it. So I'll try to tell 2 stories. Basically, one is that I actually went to events like this because I had no network. By the way, you're talking about how important that is. I had no network, no money. My parents could not support me. And so what I ended up doing was I would literally go to these types of events and just network as much as I could and like I'm an introvert, but I'll go out of my way to try to talk to people. And there was one event where basically it was like there's a pitch section of the event where it was an hour to pitch, and like every startup could pitch for like 3 minutes. And so I prepared this really long 3-minute pitch and slides and everything. And I went up to introduce myself and I said, okay, we're a hedge fund. And as soon as I said hedge fund, this guy in the audience raised his hand. He's like, wait, does that mean you're laundering money? And I'm like, oh God. And so I spent the rest of the time just explaining that we're legal and we're not like laundering money. And then after the presentation, I still had the cover slide. I didn't even get to go through any of my slides. And I went home being like, that was the biggest failure ever. And then it was like 10 p.m. and that same guy called my cell phone and he's like, hi, can you meet with me right now at my hotel and bring your co-founders? And I was like, what? And so we brought my co-founders to this hotel and we didn't know what to expect. And we talked for about 5 hours. And it turns out he's the CEO of one of the biggest fintech VCs in the world, which I was like, holy crap. And by the end of that 5-hour conversation, he's like, okay, we're going to invest. We're going to put in, your first, basically it was our first over $1 million investment into our company. And we were like, holy crap, what's happening? Because it was literally, you never know who's in the audience. You never know who's sitting next to you and who might be interested. And that just blew my mind. And that was our big break. That really was. And then the rest was history. As soon as we got that money in, we could afford to pay ourselves. I could afford to go, buy more than just ramen at the grocery store. Like, I was so happy to be able to have that. And that took 2.5 years, by the way. It wasn't easy. It's not like I just go here and immediately see success. 2.5 years of like going to these events and stuff like that. And finally, someone in the audience noticed and liked it, and it worked.
I love that story because
That's awesome.
it takes a certain boldness to venture where maybe other people would be intimidated. I mean, I remember thinking at the time, like, who am I to look at, build products with technical analysis of stock charts, and who am I to try to get business with the Fidelities and the TDs of the world? And I think part of it is the owner's mindset. There's a certain enthusiasm for your purpose, and that energy just drives you to find a way and be useful. For me, at the end of the day, it just comes down to knowing your craft and being helpful to your customers and to your team.
So I know because we've talked that we all embrace the concept of lean startup, and in particular, Dale, you also embrace the failfast concept. So what do those concepts mean to each of you? And I will start with you, Dale.
Yeah. So every new employee that gets hired at Stash literally gets a box of wonderful swag, but also the book Lean Startup. We expect everyone coming in to have read it and to really live by it. It's hard because you have these ideas and campaigns and concepts and new product features that you put all your effort and time into and spend time building, and then it could be squashed after a week of being live. But that's what it is. It's taking something, getting it to fruition, setting it free in the world, and then reading the data and following the data to the T. Like, you can't let your emotions get involved. You can't get all of that, like, we spent just a month working on this, and we're just going to kill it? Yeah, because the data, you throw it up, make sure you have good standards on how you're going to set up A/B tests, and know your customer and get that customer feedback really quickly. If you launch something and it's not working, call customers. I spend weekends calling customers. Like, we launched a custodial registration flow to get new custodial accounts open, and people weren't getting through the reg funnel. And so I spent literally a weekend, my kids running around in the back end. I'm like, I'm Dale from Stash. They're like, what? Just humor me. How come you started this account and you didn't complete? So get close to the data and really own that. And if it's not working, fix it. And if it's never going to work, kill it quick. That's what we live by.
Do you have minimums, like everybody knows going into a campaign that like you've got to meet these, otherwise we will be killing it, or?
Yep, so every new effort has baseline KPIs that you set up in advance. This is what we hope to achieve with this effort, whether it's huge, it could be a marketing campaign, it could be a product feature, it could be a new product that we launch. And if we don't hit those quickly, we're reevaluating constantly.
That's it. Christina?
I think she answered it very well.
April?
So I agree with the kill it fast, but I think there's also something to be said for persistence. So as I said, when I started my firm 10 years ago, I started talking to people about how I saw the intersection of wealth, next-gen, millennials, and technology. And at that time, I felt the vision, I could see what it was going to be like, and a million people told me no. That will never happen, that can never happen. So I think you also, killing it fast, that sounds like some of the campaigns we do for my clients, right? We'll know we're gonna kill it fast. But in terms of my own startup and my own experience, I felt like I was ahead of the curve, and the more I stayed with it, I only needed a little bit of encouragement to really feel and know I was on the right track. So usually I'll call myself the 10-year overnight success. Because sometimes when you have a good idea or a new idea, you can be ahead of the curve, and killing it just might mean that you're just not at the right place at the right time, but it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. I found myself digging up old ideas that I've had in the past and bringing them forward now and having it be the right time. So I think that you really need to think about what your idea is, where we are, and where it might fit, because sometimes the idea is just so far ahead that people can't really think it or grasp it with you.
Yep.
But that was your vision versus something that you're executing based upon a strategy, so that maybe
Yes.
slightly different.
Yeah.
So-
Well, my own business plan, though, was about this, right?
Yeah.
It was centered on these three things that people just couldn't see in the beginning.
Right,
So
different type of business.
different type of business model. Nobody thought that at the time I started my business, there was nothing that really existed in terms of high net worth financial services marketing. So when I just talked about that concept, people couldn't really grasp it. They would say, oh, that's PR. And I said, no, it's not PR. Or wealthy people, right? Or what is going to be happening? So it really required, I don't think I'm such a visionary, but it required sort of the world catching up, or financial services, which is, a little bit latent, catching up with thinking and actually executing the ideas. So I find myself now being sort of the grandmother of things, because I have a lot of history in it, where now people are really interested in hearing about millennials. When I spoke about it 10 years ago, people thought I had, 3 heads.
I can see the difference between those points of view. I mean, we started out wanting to be, again, laser sharp focused on chart pattern recognition. And we didn't want to build user interfaces. We just wanted to build the analytics and deliver it by APIs so that people could program their own stuff. But back then, APIs weren't as big of a thing, and we had to pivot. We had to change quickly, adapt to customer needs, and make their lives easier by solving the whole problem, not giving them a little piece of it. So we adapted and built all these user interface layers, and that's been tremendous over the years. And now the world is shifting back to something that we thought would have happened earlier. But certainly sometimes when you're designing products, which is what I do, is you have this grand vision. But at the end of the day, if you're too focused on perfection, and I won't dismiss high standards because that's there. Consumers expect 90%. Amazingness.
You have to go to market at some point.
You have to go to market. Your idea has no value if it's not in the real world.
Yeah.
So get it out there and then keep building.
Yep.
I would say it's a product service area, right?
It is a difference, right? Yeah, I could see that.
And then we're, of course, nodding
product
because
business
90% is very good, right? If you can get it 90%, you're pretty good. Just get it out there, because now we're digital, so you can pivot, you can change it and test it.
So Dale, I have a follow-up for you. What would you say was the one most influential experience in your career, either with a mentor or a business partner, that was pivotal for you?
So this is going to sound funny, odd, maybe. My most pivotal moment, if I can get it out even, my first boss slapped a huge box of files on my desk. I was an executive assistant, and he said, you've got to file all these. I've been collecting them for the past year and a half, and they all need to be organized. The SEC is going to come one day, and we need to have this all organized. I sat there for a second thinking like, oh, God, this sucks. And then I started going through them. And I decided I'm going to take this really terrible task, this menial task, and make it an opportunity. And I took a long time to do it, but I read every document. As I'm filing it, I realized what that project was, what that business line of unit was doing, why these financials looked like this. I learned the whole business. It took me 2 weeks, but I understood every file that I put away. And I was able to then contribute to conversation. When 2 executives were getting together and that I had scheduled that meeting, I popped my head in and I said, well, what do you think about doing something like this? Because I had read the files. And they were like, amazing, how did you even know? So I took a terrible situation, something that you wouldn't expect. I was humble, and I inserted myself in there, and I really took advantage and turned something into an opportunity. I think he did me a huge favor.
Lemons into lemonade, huh?
Yeah. Lemons into lemonade.
Yeah.
Take
So-
every opportunity.
So, and one last question, because I think we are almost out of time. Do you feel your gender affected your success or not? Starting with April.
So that's a great question. I began my career working for Kelly Services, the temporary help company at their corporate office, which was largely all women with a very thin glass ceiling of men. I changed my career up around 15 years ago to being, I thought it was a reverse, largely financial services, mostly men, but still with the same, glass ceiling. So I feel like it's been an actual benefit to be a woman in my second career because there is such a shortage of good, smart, capable women in financial services. So I want to encourage everybody in the audience that's thinking about what their career path should be. There's plenty of opportunity in so many different sectors, in so many different areas. So to answer your question, I would say I think it's been a plus, but we haven't made as much progress as we should. I haven't actually seen so much progress in my lifetime, but I'm hoping that my own millennial kids, 2 boys, I can see have a certainly different attitude about gender and gender biases than I've seen. So that's where I'm banking.
Catherine?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've literally never experienced it. And I don't know if I just have the good fortune of working with amazing professionals. I would say the only time I've ever experienced something to do with gender was as a co-op student and having the guidance counselor come in and make a comment about what is it like to be a woman in technology. I was like, I didn't notice. Like, so for me, it's just not where I focus my energy. I haven't noticed it. Who knows? I mean, who knows what if it's something about your personality or anything that influences you. For me, it's focusing on my craft, focusing on being useful, helping our customers, and that's where I direct my energy.
Christina?
So for me, unfortunately, I do notice it, and it happens to me almost all the time. And I have so many stories, so I'll just tell one really quick story, which is I was a keynote speaker at a hedge fund conference in New York. There's about 2,000 people in the audience, and there were some dinner tables at the front, towards the front of the stage, where people were, VIPs were having dinner. And I was about to walk up to give my speech, and this guy goes, "Excuse me, ma'am, could you take our plates for us?" And so first off, I was like, okay, I'm sorry, I'll take them after I give my speech. And he was like, I'm so sorry. He was like, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I'm so sorry.
Could be age.
Could be an age thing too, or how I dress. And now I wear colorful clothing and colorful shoes so that they know I'm not a waitress anymore at events. Anyway,
no black and white.
Yeah, no more black and white. It has to be colorful and bright and shiny. So anyway, then he sent me an email afterwards being like, I'm so sorry. That was totally discriminatory, and I will never do that again. And that was nice because if I didn't go up there and give that talk, he would never have learned his lesson. And so I thought, think about it the positive way, right? It bothered me at the time, but I think now it's like, it's good that we have these panels and that these events, because people can see, here's someone who I can look up to, and even if you're a guy, you can be like, I can look to a woman too.
Yep.
I thought that was really cool. So anyway, that's my story.
Now he takes your plates.
And Dale?
Yeah, I'd say I've had varying experiences. I think early on in my career, and having a very young family was hard. I had to pull back from, leadership roles, and I got passed on opportunities to run bigger teams because I had other priorities I was juggling. And those were choices, hard choices I had to make at that time. What did I want to do? Did I want to be full-time in the office and in it 100%, or did I want to take a role where I had an opportunity to raise my very young children? I have 4 of them. And so, like, you have to make trade-offs. You can't, I know we've been talking about it, you can't have it all. I'm at a different point in my career now, and I also consider myself very lucky to have gotten the role I'm in. But I still do have a lot of flexibility in what I do because I have a young family. I'm just lucky. I think a lot of other women who want that flexibility and who want to also be involved in their family life, they're up against a mountain. You are. There's just no two ways about it, because you can't give 100% to work and 100% to your family.
Yeah, I mean, it
There's a
helps you
trade-off.
be sharper too, and it's a female issue, but it's also an every person issue, whether it's taking care of your sick parents or getting more involved with your family. But so you can't deny there's a tendency for women to have a little more of the mental load or a task sometimes in a family, not every family. So it's very personal, that balance. But I do find that since having kids, going on mat leave, having to come back and be sharper and much more deliberate with my time and my productivity, the same way in school you have, parents that don't encourage their children to work while they're in school because they think somehow it's going to make them less successful, when I would say it's actually the opposite. It's going to encourage you to be that much sharper.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
The mat leave in Canada is,
A year.
tell everyone.
A year
So
paid.
you should know, this is Canada, by the way.
Okay.
That's not the US.
It's true.
Yes.
I don't know how you
move
guys do
north,
it.
I know.
Yeah. There's also another angle to this, which is, now, but more so than ever, there's so much media attention around women and women's issues in the workplace. There's more opportunity, so take advantage of that, because I know there's HR teams and there's boards that are seeking women in leadership roles, and so you are getting interviews more often. And trying, when I'm interviewing, my team tries to get just as many female candidates in as the male candidates, even though we might have way more male resumes. So there's just more opportunity. So take advantage of that, because you have that sort of wind behind your backs right now.
I want to thank all of you. This was fascinating and exciting, as I thought it would be.